Okay, so we were talking about the first love crocheted shawl, and this was done with broadband super sock. It is a cherry tree hill yarn, and it comes in like all kinds of different colors. If you do socks, it has big stripes. It's really pretty for shawls. There's a lot of projects on Ravelry done with this yarn. It is tiny, so if you just want it for a little shawlette or a little like crescent bandana, but one of the ladies, Modesty, did it in black. It was really pretty. And I think with beads, it would be super gorgeous. Okay, talking a little bit about designing your own things and not being intimidated. James Brett Marble Time Chunky and Party Time Color. What I did, I have a thread, is chained a multiple of 3 and then did 3 double crochets in one stitch and then skipped 3 and then just kept on. And I think it showed the colors nicely. So what about you? Don't be afraid to just take out your hook and needles and just start in. I had read this story in one of the Knit Look books or one of those about a woman that signed up for a knitting class at the Smithsonian. And when the class started, it was on abstract knitting, and she was very miserable and wanted to just drop out and go home. But she stayed, and what you were doing was just knitting, just getting some yarn and just doing whatever your brain's telling you to do. She loved it. And I wish I could remember her name, but when I checked out her Ravelry projects, they were very inspiring and interesting. So try it. I took some Debbie Bliss Odin, which is a super bulky, and some Plymouth Essex, which is a bulky wool, and I did part of it in the tan, then I added a dark purple, and then some of the Essex. And if you don't know how to get jogless stripes so that your stripes aren't, it's not hard at all. When you come to the time, when it's time to change colors, on the next row you go into the stitch below. There's something in art design called low horizontal and high horizontal. This would be a high horizontal. You divide your painting into thirds, and the 1/3 could be the sky or it could be the design. So think about like a desert, and then you have buildings, or the ocean, and then you have ships across the top. You can also do low horizontals, and you can turn it this way. You'll see pictures in magazines where maybe there's a door and then there's the figure. But once you learn that design, you'll see it everywhere. And I wish I had a knitting magazine in front of me, because I'm sure I would pick it up and see examples. Here's one. So there's your 1/3, 2/3 design, and you can use that in, and that wasn't staged. You can use that in knitting. What the thought in art design is 50% and 50% is boring. You want to offset it and make it interesting. So this is just basic seed stitch. If I wanted to even be a little bit more interesting, maybe I could have did a different stitch here, but it is what it is. I liked it. I had fun. And I'm challenging you to do a little design. Sometimes you don't need design. Sometimes just plain knitting, plain crocheting in itself is pretty. This was a sample that the company gave me to show people the beautiful stitch definition from Love Wool, and it's just double crochets, and it's nice. So you don't need fancy. You don't need a fancy. Things repeated are pretty. What I have on is the Galaxy shawl, and you spell that with an IE at the end. I love this yarn because you're warm, but you're never hot. You never get sweaty. You just feel good. And that shawl is done with Katia Darling, which is a fingering sock weight yarn, and did all these pretty designs. And of course I sold out of this color, but I have other colors. All right. Do any of you know Stephanie McPhee? She's from Canada, and she's written books. Knitting Rules is one, and she can be very funny, and her stories can be unforgettable. And I remember once this lady saw her knitting, and the lady said, you know, you ought to get a hobby. And you think, what do people think that knitting is? So the Little at Knit's End book, I was reading a quote by George M. Adams. We cannot waste time, we can only waste ourselves. Sometimes people come up to me when I'm knitting and they say things like, oh, I wish I could knit, but I'm just not the kind of person who can sit and waste time like that. How can knitting be wasting time? First, I never just knit. I knit and think, knit and listen, knit and watch. Secondly, you aren't wasting time if you get a useful or beautiful object at the end of it. I will remember that not everyone understands, and I will resist the urge to ask others what they do when they watch TV. I thought that was funny because knitters and crocheters don't waste time. That's why they can't stand to be idle. They always have to be doing something. So, what did you think about that? Also had shown you the perfect topping. You get the yarn, you get the pom-pom to make a hat, and they have a cute little design with the ice cream cone. And I think I told you that I got bored of doing hats. So the little Wee Speedy pattern by Tega Hillard, I made one with one skein of that, and it turned out really cute. It does call for a super bulky yarn. You can make these easily in an evening. And this one I've shown before. That was done with double strand of Seasons, a cute little button to match. And somewhere around here, I have a third one I wanted to show you because she has variations in her Wee Speedy 2, Wee Cupcake, and here we go. Isn't that cute? So because it wasn't a super bulky yarn, I did Babe Soft Cotton Chunky, which is a cotton acrylic blend. And as a carry along, I added Louisa Harding No Ema, which is a fun yarn. You can do pretty shawls with it. And I put the two together. I am proud of me. And so I created a one-of-a-kind yarn that nobody else has probably ever done. Kudos. Are you proud of yourself? Do you take pictures of your things? I remember one time my pastor said God made the world and he admired it. You make a cake, you admire it. Every time you walk by the counter, you admire it. Unless you have a story like my mother. Years ago, she made a fancy cake because they were having company, and while they're all sitting around playing cards, she sees this trail of ants going up the refrigerator and all over her cake. So, unless you have that kind of cake, but I mean, don't we do that with our things? We make it and then do you ever, while you're knitting, keep stretching it out and looking at it and admiring it, stretching it? Sometimes after every single row, I do that. No wonder I'm not a fast knitter, but I'm having fun, right? I am having fun. Susan B. Anderson is a woman I admire, and I love her patterns. And this is called the 50-row shawlette. And I think I thought because it was only 50 rows, I would just zoom through this, and I really didn't. It's really cute on a little girl. It hangs down, but on a woman, it's still cute. It's like a little capelet, and then just hangs down a little bit. Of course, you could make it longer if you wanted to. I do like the design. It is a pattern you have to purchase, and I do like the way it hangs. This was done with Cascade Avalon Multi, which is a cotton acrylic yarn. 50% cotton, 50% acrylic. So I'm happy with it. Okay, ready for another shawl? A lot of you have probably been familiar with Reyna shawl, R-E-Y-N-A. A lot of people have made the Reyna shawl, and I'm looking for the designer. It is Nora with 2 O's and O-O-R-A Backlund. But I saw on Ravelry that somebody did it with a number 10 needle and a worsted yarn. Copycat, I'll admit it. I liked her result so much that I wanted to do the same thing, and it truly was super fast. There I am on my number 10 needles, and my husband and I are watching a really good movie, and it's almost 11:30 at night, and I need about 3 more yards of yarn, and I actually came over here to the yarn shop to get it. This is Plymouth Kudo. Now, the other gal that made this said the yarn was difficult to work with. I didn't have that problem. To me, it kind of has this stone wash rustic effect that I really like. It's not soft and smooth, but I like it. 40% rayon, 55% cotton, 5% silk. And there are some of the beautiful colors. There's a crochet pattern I've seen that uses this color, and I definitely want to do it. So how do you handle stress, sickness, whatever? One of the things I do when I have a major event, like let's say you have the flu and you're in bed for a week, you may not feel like doing much, but I want to make something beautiful out of that misery. I read a book once, Don't Waste Your Pain, and I believe that. So when the house flooded, after things calmed down, the same night, I started working on this. It's a simple pattern, Sunshine Coast yarn, which, this is Sunshine Coast yarn. It's a DK weight, and it's a superwash merino and bamboo blend. This is one of the colors. Excuse me. Ah! That's the color I'm doing. And yeah, later, I just want to say, in a dismal moment, I created some bright cheerfulness, and when I wear it, I will remember that there were bright moments during all that, and that God was ever present. And that pattern is a Taki pattern. Taki's a company that moved to Pennsylvania a few years ago. And I will show you that pattern here in a minute or two. Maybe 2. Okay, maybe 2. I did find this book, and there are some worthwhile patterns in here. It's a small book. It was called the Taki Terra Collection, and there's a sweater. Not so sure about the raggy taggy scarf. I mean, I know designers need something different to make themselves stand out, but to me, it's just a seed stitch scarf with some strands poking out of it. But you know what? I've learned, don't judge. I had a pattern in here, and one day I was going to throw those patterns away because I said, nobody is ever going to make this. And in came a lady with that pattern in her hand and said, I'm here to get yarn to make this. I felt really humbled and ashamed. Like, beauty is in the eye of the believer, right? So I like this. I do. And I decided to cast it on. And I'm trying to get out of the colors I always pick, the greens and things. That's why I put this on today. I'm trying to get out of my comfort color zone. Perfection Super Bulky. I like the color. It's heathery. It's done on a large needle. Wow, not so good. For brand new needles, they're already wearing off. I am not sure why it tells you to knit this in 2 pieces. Can't really figure out the benefit of that. So I'm at the part where you decrease and kind of trying to decide if I want to make it bigger, but nah, I think I'll do that. But again, I'm not understanding why I didn't just keep doing it. It's a pretty fast knit. There's the pattern. I got a Katia book out for a new knitter who wanted to make a hat, and I was surprised to see flat hats that are seamed. And I made one of those last year, and I really wasn't happy with seaming it, and I would love to know like what the benefit of that is. I mean, I get it if you do it on a machine and it's flat and then you seam it, but I'm kind of just not getting it. Wanted to introduce a little segment. You know, isn't it human nature to try to organize and create segments? And it just is. It's just human nature. But yard sale, community aid, Goodwill find. So we were at the Goodwill, and I found this shawl. Oh, for a couple bucks. $1.50, $2. And I mean, this is somebody's hard work. I'm wondering, how did this end up there? But I heard Tin Can Knits say that a lady they knew found one of their sweaters knitted in Malabrigo at the Goodwill for like, I think, $6. I am not sure of the pattern, but I just couldn't let it sit there. So what kind of things have you found? And I will keep doing this segment, and if you want to share, feel free. And I have a shawl that's almost finished. It's one of those shawls where it's almost finished, it's almost finished, it's almost finished. I'm going to finish it tonight. No, I need more yarn. I'll finish it tomorrow. Oh no, repeat row 1 to 10, 10 more times. It's called Maya's Shawl, M-A-Y-A apostrophe S, by Justina Lorowski. And this will be the bottom of the scarf with these lacy patterns. And next podcast, when I have it blocked, then you'll be able to see it a lot better. This is Debbie Bliss Cashmerino Aran, which you can now get as an Ella Ray product. It is nice and soft and nice to work with, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this, knitting this. And it is on a 10 needle. Something about a 10 needle that you're just zooming. And it does have pretty stitch definition. There might be some new people out there that don't realize if you rip out, that's called tink, knitting backwards, and you do it the wrong way, maybe go that way instead of that way, and your stitches are not on right. So normally when you look at a stitch, you can't see the back of the stitch. If you rip it out and you put it on the needle wrong, you can see the front and the back. When you knit that, you'll feel it pulling and twisting, and you will see it in your work. You'll see a row where the stitches look different, and it's not pleasant to the eye. I feel sorry when people do it and they don't know, and then they look at the back of their sweater and you have these sections that don't look right. The funny thing is, one time I knew a knitter and she wanted to get a sweater quantity of yarn, and she spent a lot of time picking it out, and then she looked at the price and said, I can't do that. And so she picked a cheaper yarn, and when she came in, the whole back of her sweater had these sections where I could tell she ripped out and the stitches were all twisted. And I tried to gently tell her that, and she said, it's because I didn't get the merino yarn. If I had gotten the merino, so I just kind of backed off because that's what she believed. But if you don't learn how to fit, I mean, they say your best lesson is your latest mistake. Well, then you're just going to do it again and again and again, right? So the little lammy section. Who is ever too old for a teddy bear? I want to know. My dad, his last name is Bear, B-A-I-R. And one time a friend of mine said, look at this in the newspaper. Some guy's name is Theodore Bear. Who names their child that? And I said, that's my dad's first cousin. I don't care who it is. We always called him Ted, but Teddy Bear, Theodore Bear, he didn't seem to have a problem with it. I knew an older lady once, and she said she got a teddy bear as a gift, and she oohed and awed and crooned about it, and pretty soon everybody in the family was bringing her teddy bears. She had a whole room of teddy bears that she just said, this is just out of sight. So this little teddy bear is modeling a little baby dress. And this is done with Ella Rae Cozy Bamboo. It's nice to knit with. It's a DK weight. This is where the pattern comes from. Really has a nice sheen to it. And this little gal is just the right size. Here's the pattern. It's called Lucy. And I would recommend it. It was a nice knit. It was cute. There it is. Okay. And the half-finished shawl I showed you is called the Bobble Capelet. And let's see here. I don't know that I was even planning to show you this, but this is called the Plumette, or it's Plumette, I think, shawl by, I am going to not know her name because she is one of my favorite designers, and she, I think, had a big job and then decided to knit. I think she was a farmer's daughter and then got this big job, and then ended up marrying a farmer herself and has a couple little kids, and we'll get back to that. So I said I was going to do the Little Lammy Time, which is the little kids segment of the show. This is also done out of baby cashmerino. You do have to seam it. I know some of us anymore don't want to do any seaming, but look how nice that looks. And this came out of one of the Cascade 60 quick, I think, baby knits. This striped. I think it's this book. I do want to make that little, I have a thing for red and black plaid. Isn't that cute? That little red and black. But there are lots of nice patterns in these books. I think it's a steal. For like $17.99, you get 60 patterns. And I had a trunk show once, and they sent me a lot of these patterns. And they were really, really cute. Really, really cute to see. And there is the one that we made. The eyelet cardigan. So that is that. And we also, with Baby Cashmerina, out of one of those books, did the little mittens, 60 More Quick Knits. That was that book. Aren't they cute? Yeah, you don't want your little baby to have cold hands. Okay, let's see. What did we miss, if anything? The plumette. I'll finish showing you this. I like the pattern, and I've seen this in different things. Thinking Stitch Nerd is her name. There's the Pacific Colorway Chunky. And this was done with 2 skeins of that. Isn't that nice? I like kind of the way they got away from the variegated yarn and went to the waves. I think it's just a nice, so I think it's Stitch Nerd, but if I'm wrong, I'll let you know. Just some little updates on the last podcast. I showed you the lamb shoes that you can do in all sizes, all the way up to adult. Has a little heel, a sole insert, but I forgot to tell you where you can find the pattern, and it's in the Juniper Moon Yearling book. Okay. Just for a joke and a teaching session, I had made Peppa Pig and George. I had to like work on coming up with like plastic canvas to put in here and down here. But if anybody's ever made stuffed toys, you learn very quickly that you need to do the stitches tightly, which mine aren't tight enough, and you really have to overstuff the neck, because look at what happened to my poor piggy. And I had a little grandson that would watch Peppa Pig. His name is Nolan, and he began to speak like he was British. And he came over one night after it rained, and he's like, "Grandma, can we splash in muddy puddles?" And I'm thinking, who is this child? "Can we, Grandma?" And he would say, I can't do it. "Would you like to come and splash in muddy puddles?" Well, he had boots, and we went down the street, and we jumped in the puddles and had a great time. And I had made this for him. But sadly, I think a broken neck, which reminds me of years ago when I was a nurse's aide in a retirement home. We had this one lady that would sit like this. I can't even get my neck over as far as she did. Sit like that until they put her to bed. And beside her was a little old lady who was 98 years old named Ethel. And Ethel would always say, "There's that lady with the broken neck." Well, Emily never talked. The lady with the broken neck, she never talked. And but I learned talk to somebody, because they could still be in there. And so I would always talk to her when I was taking care of her, and sometimes I would sing to her. And then one day I reached up to her shelf, and she had a little teddy bear, and I pulled it out and I said, "Oh, isn't he cute?" And she said, "Put that down." Whoa. So I told all the other staff, and they said, "No, you did not hear that. She does not talk." And I said, "She can talk. She just chooses not to." Nobody believed me. And then one night I was getting her ready for bed and talking to her, And I got called out of the room, and I said, Emily, I'll be back in a minute. And somebody else walked in, and she said, where's Catherine? And I forgot to start out the podcast again and tell you my name. I'm supposed to start out and say, hello, this is Catherine Kirby from the Creative You Yarn Shop in Pennsylvania. And I did it again. Doing. I don't know when I'm going to get this straight. I just hope my viewers are entertained and not spending the whole time thinking, who is this lady and what is this podcast about? Maybe next time I can get it right. So then everybody believed me. Maybe she was just too tired to talk. Sometimes too, if people are in terrible, terrible pain, they will just stop talking. And it can be very, very hard for a spouse. If your spouse has cancer and you go home every single day and they don't talk anymore, it can be very, very awkward. And then going to work is your release. So, is there anything else, yes, that we want to talk about? This is a yarn called Karaoke. It's a beautiful felter. It's actually soft. It has soy in it. And you know, I think everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people have gotten away from using straight needles. So it's just a little strip, and I found it really awkward on these chalgoos to try to knit this little strip, and thought it would have been better to have straight needles. Also, the yarn is splitting just about every stitch. So Prime, I guess I'm saying that right, has a new needle design out. They sell for under $8, and they are a little flexible, but look at these tips. They're kind of shaped like little spoons. They taper, and from all the reviews that I have read and watched, they say that your yarn does not split. You will not have trouble with splitting. So let's see. You know what? I'm liking it. It has great glide, and isn't that really cool? So I carry these in my shop, and I think it's really good. I think it's great to think outside of the box. And just because something has always been shaped a certain way doesn't mean it should be. And who knows whether this is just, I'm restless today because people aren't coming in, or I really want to do this, but it's Vogue Magazine, Fall 2006. And I think this is kind of a classy pattern. Knitted in one piece. And I thought this would be different, a different color, something I don't normally choose. And since I have a lot of things going, you know, who knows. But I just say in closing that you get preconceived ideas about things, and your mind assumes things. And with all these people calling your things whips and work in progress, I kept thinking of that song, Whip It. It's sung by Devo. And I said to my husband, what do you think about that song? Like, what do you think of? And we both thought it had like a negative connotation. What's actually crack that whip, give the past the slip, step on a crack, break your mama's back. When a problem comes along, you must whip it. Before the cream sits out too long, you must whip it. When something's gone wrong, you must whip it. Whip it into shape, shape it up, get straight, go forward. You will never live it down unless you whip it. No one gets away until they whip it. And then they repeat the chorus. Whip it into shape, shape it up, get straight, go forward, move ahead, try to detect it. It's not too late to whip it into shape. Shape it up, get straight, go forward, move ahead, try to detect it. It's not too late to whip it. Good. And I was totally amazed. So I'm wondering why I was thinking what I'm thinking. But even in knitting, if you have to add an extra stitch or take away a stitch or add 3 stitches, forget it. Because all the work that you're doing, you're going to end up ripping it back. It's like they said, basically nip it in the bud. Recognize there's a problem and nip it in the bud. So I was thinking about talking about the Boundaries book. So if any of you aren't interested, but honestly, that book has been a life changer to so many patients that I recommended it to. I'm a family practice doctor by trade, and I did a lot of rotations in psychiatry. Towson and McLeod have out probably hundreds of books. They have Boundaries in Family, Boundaries with Children, just plain boundaries. And first of all, it teaches you to set boundaries, and it talks about each house having a little fence around it, and that's a healthy boundary. If you have a neighbor who, say, puts trash in your yard every day, and you go out there and pick it up and put it away, it is your problem. They haven't respected your boundary, but you've made it your problem. One of the things the book taught me is to put the problem where it belongs and to learn to speak honestly, genuinely, sincerely, and address a problem. There's something called triangularization, where let's say that I'm worried about my mom. I think she's not functioning. Maybe I'm worried about her mental status, but I don't say anything to her. I tell my sister. Now we've created this triangle. My mom is here, I'm here, my sister's. I'm talking to my sister. My sister might, but it's not healthy. Whereas I should say, Mom, yeah, I'm a little bit worried. Well, suppose she blows up and takes that wrong. You can't control the response. You can only. So suppose a patient is late all the time. They insist on the 1 o'clock spot, but they're always late. And then everybody behind them is upset and late. It teaches you how to address that boundary violation. If a relationship can't endure a boundary, it is very, very weak. And one thing I liked all through the book is they gave you lots of examples and lots of little stories. Once you learn boundary violations, you go out in public, you see them all over the place. Your jaw drops. Little kids, they can set boundary violations. You put a stethoscope on a toddler, they take it off. Little kids will tell you, it's time for you to go home. You go home now. But we drive it out of them. We make them kiss ground. I don't want to kiss ground. You know, we make them do things. But they know how to do it. As an adult, we kind of lose our way with that. But let's talk about a weak relationship. Okay, so you and your girlfriend go to the movies every 2 weeks, go out to get something to eat, but you're feeling really tired now. The sword's thinking you're coming down with something, and so you call her or text her. I think in today's world of texts, it's a lot of blurry territory because you can't hear somebody's tone of voice. You don't know what they're thinking. But you let your friend know that, I think I'm going to skip tonight. And instead of saying, oh, okay, I hope you feel better, she says, what? I've been looking forward to this all week. And you write back, well, I'm really not feeling well. I don't think I'd enjoy the movie. Oh, come on. You're a softie. Okay, stop right there. When someone tries to shame you, you are being manipulated. That's something I learned. Stop right there. You're being manipulated. Do you want to be manipulated? Because let's just say that person manipulates you into going to the movies. Well, now you kind of have this power thing going on. What you found out is this is a really weak relationship. It would fall apart easily. It could be a sister, a mother, brother, best friend. But you have to be able to handle boundaries. Go back to the neighbor with the trash. You knock on his door and say, excuse me, you've been putting trash in our yard and Yeah, I've been having to clean it up. You would hope he's going to say, oh, you know, I don't know, but you don't know what he's going to say. You don't know what he's going to say, but you can't control that. I would recommend this book. Maybe we'll talk about it some more. But in the meantime, have a great week. And whatever you do, do your best. Be proud of yourself. It's not bragging if you can do it. Be kind and shine, baby, shine. Signing out.